They mocked a beggar for 7 years. He owned everything they had. Stories like this, every week, ancient wisdom, modern lessons. I am the law keeper. Subscribe now. Hit the bell. Don't miss your story.
Imagine a man who sat in dust for 7 years. He wore rags. He held an empty bowl. The whole village walked past him every single day. They spat on him. They kicked dirt at him. They called him a fool. But this beggar was not what he seemed. The truth about who he really was would bring the entire village to its knees. Long ago, in a village in the heart of Africa, there was a prosperous place called Amanfro. The village had grown rich from cocoa and gold. The compounds were large with painted walls and iron roofs. The chief's house had 3 floors. The market was always full of traders selling cloth, spices, and palm wine. The people of Amanfro had everything: good harvests, strong children, respect from neighboring villages. But with their wealth came something dangerous: pride. The kind of pride that makes people forget where they came from, the kind that makes them look down on those who have less. And at the gate of this proud village sat a beggar named Kofi. Kofi was about 60 years old. His clothes were torn and faded. His feet were cracked and dusty. His hair was gray and uncombed. He carried nothing but a wooden bowl and a small mat to sit on. Every morning, Kofi took his place by the village gate. He did not cry out for money. He did not chase after people. He simply sat there quietly, watching everyone who passed. Some villagers dropped small coins in his bowl. Most did not even look at him. They walked past like he was invisible, like he was less than the dogs that roamed the streets. The chief of Amanfro was a man named Mensa. He was fat and proud, with gold chains around his neck and rings on every finger. His wife Abena was even prouder. She wore the finest cloth and looked at poor people like they were insects. Every day, Chief Mensa walked past Kofi on his way to the market, and every day he stopped to insult him. "Still here, Kofi," the chief would say with a sneer. 7 years sitting in dust. Have you no shame? My dog works harder than you." The villagers who heard would laugh. They laughed loud and cruel. They thought it was funny to see a powerful man mock a helpless one. But Kofi never reacted. He never shouted back. He never cried. He just looked at the chief with calm eyes and a small smile on his lips. "The dust remembers what feet forget, Chief," Kofi would say quietly. "I am comfortable here." This answer always confused Chief Mensa. What did it mean? The dust remembers. Nonsense. The chief would shake his head and walk away, his wife laughing beside him. "He speaks like a madman," Abena would say. "When my son becomes chief, we will sweep this trash from our gates forever." And she would kick dust at Kofi as she passed. Day after day, month after month, year after year, the same thing happened. The villagers mocked Kofi. They threw stones at him. They refused to give him food. Children called him names. Market women chased him away when he came too close to their stalls. Kofi accepted all of this. He never complained. He never explained himself. He just watched. But there was something strange in his eyes. If you looked closely, truly closely, you would see that they were not the eyes of a fool. They were sharp, calculating. They missed nothing. What the village did not know was that Kofi had a secret that would change everything. You see, when darkness fell and the village slept, Kofi did not stay at the gate. He stood up from his dusty mat, he brushed off his rags, and he walked into the forest behind the village. He walked for almost an hour on a hidden path that no one else knew. He pushed through thick vines and crossed a small stream, and then he came to a place that would shock anyone who saw it. A mansion. Not a hut, not a simple compound. A mansion. White walls, glass windows, a gate with guards who bowed when they saw him. "Good evening, Mr. Asante," the guards would say with deep respect, and Kofi, the beggar, would nod and walk inside like the master of the house. Because he was. 40 years ago, a young man named Kofi lived in Amanfro. His father owned good land, fertile and blessed. The family was not rich, but they were comfortable. They had enough. But Chief Mensah's father wanted that land. He wanted it bad. So he forged documents. He paid corrupt officials. He told lies to the elders, and he stole the land from Kofi's family. Kofi's father fought back, but he was just a simple farmer against a powerful chief. The stress broke him. He fell sick and died within a year. Kofi's mother, heartbroken, followed her husband to the grave 3 months later. Young Kofi was left with nothing, no parents, no land, no home, no future. The village turned their backs on him. No one helped, no one cared. They were afraid of the chief. They did not want trouble. So Kofi left. He walked away from Amanfro with nothing but the clothes on his back and a fire burning in his heart. He walked to the big city far away. He found work at the docks, carrying heavy loads for small pay. He saved every coin. He slept on the ground. He ate only what he needed to survive. Years passed. Kofi was smart. He watched how business worked. He learned. He took risks. Small investments became bigger ones. A single truck became a fleet of trucks. A small shop became a warehouse. A warehouse became a trading company. By the time Kofi was 50 years old, he was one of the richest men in the region. His transport company moved goods across 3 countries. His investments touched cocoa, gold, timber, and textiles. He had homes in many cities. He had respect from powerful people. But he never forgot Amanfro. He never forgot what they did to his family. He never forgot the chief who stole everything and the villagers who did nothing. Kofi could have returned in glory at any time. He could have marched into the village with lawyers and police. He could have taken back his land through the courts. He could have crushed Chief Mensah with his wealth. But Kofi wanted something different, something justice alone could not give him. He wanted to see the truth about who these people really were. Had they changed? Were there good hearts hiding behind the cruelty, or was the whole village rotten to the core? So Kofi did something that shocked even his closest advisors. He put on rags, he dirtied his face, he walked back to Amanfro as a beggar. For 7 years he sat at that gate. For 7 years he let them mock him, insult him, abuse him. For 7 years he watched and remembered every face, every word, every act of cruelty, and every act of kindness. Because not everyone was cruel. There were a few, just a few, who treated Kofi like a human being. The first was an old woman named Mama. She was 80 years old, bent and frail, with white hair and gentle eyes. Every morning she brought Kofi water and a small portion of whatever food she had, kenke and fish, roasted plantain, sometimes just plain porridge. Kofi would accept her gift with tears in his eyes. Mama Efua, why do you help me? The others will mock you too. The old woman would shrug. Let them mock. When I stand before the ancestors, they will not ask how much gold I had. They will ask how much kindness I gave. Then came Kweku, the blind drummer. He could not see Kofi's rags. He only heard a man's voice, and he shared his food simply because it was the right thing to do. Then there was Adwa, the crippled weaver. Her legs did not work, so she knew what it was like to be looked down on. She gave Kofi cloth to keep warm in the cold season. And then there was little Ama, an orphan girl of 10. She had nothing. She begged for food herself, but when she found a mango, she would break it in half and give one to Kofi. We are the same, she would say simply. We should share. 4 people. In a village of 400, only 4 showed kindness to the beggar at the gate. Kofi kept careful records, not on paper, but in his heart. He remembered every name, every face, every action. The ones who showed mercy went in one column. The ones who showed cruelty went in another. The scales were heavily unbalanced. Years passed. Then came the rainy season. But this was not a normal rain. It was a flood. Water fell from the sky in sheets so thick you couldn't see your hand in front of your face. The river burst its banks. Water rushed through the village streets. People panicked. They grabbed their valuables and ran for higher ground. Chief Mensa screamed orders at his servants. Save the gold, save the documents, leave nothing valuable behind. In the chaos, everyone forgot about the beggar at the gate, except Mama Efua. The old woman was struggling against the current, trying to reach safety, but when she looked back, she saw Kofi sitting calmly in the rising water. It was already at his waist. "Kofi!" she screamed against the roar of the rain. "Come, you will drown!" She turned back. She waded towards him through the dangerous water. Her small bundle of possessions floated away behind her. She did not even look at it. She grabbed Kofi's arm and pulled. "You foolish man, move!" She dragged him through the flood. She used all her strength. This old woman of 80 years, she pulled him up the hill to safety. When they reached dry ground, she collapsed, breathing hard. Chief Mensa watched from the hilltop. He laughed. "Let the river take the trash," he shouted. "One less beggar to stink up my gates." Kofi heard this. His eyes, calm until now, turned cold. The final judgment had been made. 1 week later, the floodwaters went down. The village was damaged but standing. People began to clean up and repair their homes. They thought the worst was over. They were wrong. It started with the sound of cars. Many cars, expensive cars with tinted windows and government plates. The villagers stopped their work and stared. Cars like these never came to Amanfro. Chief Mensa puffed up with pride. He smoothed his robes and walked toward the vehicles with a big smile. "Ah, finally, Accra recognizes our village," he said loudly. Come, I am Chief Mensa, the leader of..." The lead official walked right past him. He did not even look at the chief. The whole group of lawyers and government men walked past the chief like he did not exist. They walked to the village gate, to the dusty spot where the beggar always sat. Kofi was there, still in his rags, sitting on his mat. The lead official bowed deeply. "Mr. Asante," he said with respect, "the documents are ready. The village land registry you requested." Chief Mensa's face went through many expressions. Confusion first, then doubt, then shock, then pure horror as he began to understand. Kofi rose slowly from the dust. He reached up and removed his tattered robe. Beneath it, he wore simple but expensive traditional cloth. On his finger was a gold ring with his family crest. His posture changed completely. His back straightened, his shoulders squared, his chin lifted. This was not a beggar. This was a king returning to claim his throne. The silence was so complete you could hear the wind moving through the trees. Kofi spoke. His voice was different now, deep, commanding, the voice of a man who had given orders to hundreds of workers, who had negotiated with ministers and foreign businessmen. "For 7 years I sat at your gates, not to beg." He began to walk toward Chief Mensa. The crowd parted before him like water before a boat. To remember every insult, every stone, every door slammed, every scrap denied. Chief Mensa was trembling now. His legs gave way. He fell to his knees in the dust. Kofi, we didn't know." Kofi stopped directly in front of him. He looked down at the man who had tormented him for 7 years, the son of the man who had destroyed his family 40 years ago. "That is the point," he said quietly. "You didn't know if I was rich or poor. You only knew I was suffering, and you chose cruelty." He held up his stack of documents. "Your grandfather stole my family's land with forged papers. I have now purchased every debt this village owes, every mortgage, every loan, the cocoa warehouse, the transport contracts, the market stalls." His eyes swept over the crowd, hundreds of faces staring back at him with fear. "I own Amanfro, every hut, every farm, every business, and today I collect." The villagers erupted in panic. Some cried, some shouted in anger, some fell to their knees and began to beg. Chief Mensa grabbed at Kofi's legs. "Please, have mercy. I have children. I have grandchildren. We will lose everything."
Kofi looked down at him with cold eyes. Did you show mercy when my father begged you to spare our land? Did you show mercy when my mother wept at your feet? Did you show mercy when I sat in dust for 7 years? The chief had no answer. He could only weep. But Kofi raised his hand and the crowd went silent. However, he said, and there was something different in his voice now, something that might have been warmth. There were 4 among you who showed me kindness, 4 hearts that remained true even when no one was watching. He turned. Mama Yefwa, come forward. The old woman was pushed forward by the crowd. She could barely walk. She looked terrified and confused. The orphan girl Ama held her hand and guided her. Kofi's face softened when he saw her. The cold mask fell away. This was not the powerful businessman. This was the hungry beggar who had been fed by a kind old woman. You fed me when you had nothing, he said gently. You saved my life when the waters came. You lost everything you owned to pull a beggar to safety. He handed her a document. She could not read, so the lawyer whispered in her ear, explaining what it said. Her eyes went wide. She began to shake. Then she collapsed into Kofi's arms, weeping like a child. The document gave her the chief's compound, all of it, 10 acres of the best cocoa farmland, a pension that would care for her until her last breath. The chief's wife Abena screamed in fury. No, that is my house. You cannot. Shh. Silence, Kofi said, and his voice was like a whip. Abena fell silent. One by one, Kofi called forward the others who had shown him kindness. Kweku, the blind drummer, received the village music hall and funds to start a school for young musicians. Ajwa, the crippled weaver, received the textile shop and enough money to hire 10 assistants. Little Ama, the orphan girl, received a full scholarship to the best schools in the country. Her family, an aunt who had reluctantly taken her in, received a house and a small business. 4 people, 4 rewards, given not because they knew Kofi was rich, given because they showed kindness to a stranger who had nothing. Then Kofi turned to the rest of the village. As for you, the lawyers moved through the crowd. They handed out papers, eviction notices, debt collections, loan demands. All the debts the villagers owed to banks, to traders, to each other, Kofi now owned, and he was calling them in. But here is the thing. Here is what made Kofi different from the people who wronged him. He did not destroy them completely. He did not throw them into the streets with nothing. He simply stopped protecting them from their own choices. The debts they owed were real. The loans they had taken were real. They had lived beyond their means for years, trusting that somehow things would work out. Kofi had simply purchased those debts, and now he was collecting what was owed. Many families had to sell their large compounds and move to smaller homes. Many businesses had to close because they could not pay what they owed. Chief Mensa lost his title, his house, his gold chains. He was last seen carrying a small bag of clothes out of the compound that now belonged to Mama Yefwa. But no one starved. No one was completely homeless. Kofi offered work to those who would take it. His companies needed workers. Those who were willing to be humble, to start over, to work honestly. They found jobs and rebuilt their lives. Those who refused, who stayed proud and bitter, who blamed Kofi for their troubles instead of themselves, they suffered, but that was their choice. Kofi never lived in Amanfro again. He did not need to. He had found what he was looking for. He had separated the good hearts from the bad. He had rewarded kindness and allowed cruelty to face its consequences. But every year, on the anniversary of the Great Flood, 4 gifts arrived at the village gate. Beautiful baskets filled with gold, food, medicine, and cloth. They were unsigned. No one knew where they came from, but everyone knew. And the people of Amanfro changed. They learnt their lesson. Now, whenever a stranger appears at the gate, tired and hungry and dressed in rags, the villagers rush to help. They offer food and water and a place to rest. Because you never know. You never know who that stranger might be. You never know what test you might be facing. You never know if the stone you kick on the road might be the cornerstone of your own house. The elders of Amanfro still tell this story to their children. They tell it to teach respect. They tell it to teach humility. They tell it to remind everyone that kindness is never wasted, that cruelty always comes back, that the ancestors watch everything we do. And somewhere in a mansion beyond the great hills, an old man sits by a window looking at the stars. He does not need revenge anymore. He has found something better. He has found peace. His name is Kofi Asante, the beggar who owned the village, the man who waited 7 years for justice, the teacher who showed an entire village the price of cruelty and the reward of kindness.
And that is the end of this tale. But before you leave, let me ask you something. And I want you to answer honestly. Not for me, for yourself. When Kofi sat in that dust for 7 years, 400 people walked past him. 400 people saw a man suffering. 400 people had the chance to show kindness. Only 4 did. 4 out of 400. That is 1%. 1 single percent of people who chose compassion when no one was watching, when there was no reward, when it cost them something. Now, here is my question for you. Which group are you in? When you see someone struggling, someone with nothing to offer you, someone the world has forgotten, what do you do? Do you walk past like the other 396? Or do you stop? I am not asking what you think you would do. I am asking what you actually do. Because the truth is in your actions, not your intentions. The people who stayed until the end of this story, the people who felt something when Mama Efua saved a stranger in the flood, the people whose hearts beat faster when justice finally came, those are my people. Those are the ones I make these stories for. You felt something watching this. I know you did. That feeling has a name. It is called recognition. Your soul recognized truth when it heard it. That is not an accident. That is not entertainment. That is your ancestors speaking to you through story, reminding you who you are supposed to be. So here's what I want you to do. If this story touched something inside you, if you want more stories that speak to your soul and not just your eyes, then subscribe to this channel. Not because I am asking, because you are the kind of person who values wisdom, because you are the kind of person who finishes what they start, because you are the kind of person who wants to be in that 1%. Hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell, and leave me a comment telling me which character you saw yourself in. Be honest, confession is the first step to change. The Lawkeeper has many more stories to tell, stories about patience, stories about justice, stories about the masks people wear and the truths they hide. But those stories are only for those who return, only for those who commit, only for those who understand that wisdom is not given to those who wander, it is given to those who stay. I will see you in the next story, or I will not. The choice, like all choices that matter, is yours.